Hey guys, it's Nick, and I got Tyler here with
You're
me
doing
this
the
week.
intro?
I'm doing
Cool.
the intro.
It's like old times.
Well, I figured we'd volley this back
Okay,
and forth.
you first.
No, you did it.
Oh,
this
okay.
time.
Then you second.
Well, either way, it's Tyler and I this week again. You guys gave us a ton of response on just a couple weeks ago when we recorded just a one-on-one Tyler and I conversation. This week, we're talking specifically about kids and introducing education, and this goes way beyond our industry, like way beyond construction, but realizing that, in my opinion, and I think as you'll listen to this, you'll realize that we are educating people way too late in life and trying to course correct them based on, like, 25 years old. Hey, you should follow what your passion is. You should quit your job and go after your passion. And it's like, well, maybe that passion was ripped away when they were 4 years old, staring out the window at, an excavator ripping up the street, when their parents told them, you don't want to get into that industry. It's too backbreaking.
For sure. And like, to kind of touch on that, I was watching a clip from a podcast where the guy was basically saying that he regretted, if he were to do it over again, he would have taken his 20s to really self-explore and figure out what he wanted to do and find direction. And then, when he was in his late 20s, early 30s, then pursue the career. And while that seems amazing, that would be great, I think that at that point, it's, again, too late. I think that exposing yourself to all of these things as a younger boy or girl and then exploring them in your teens, potentially foregoing sports to look into other things where it's not, you don't have to take the path that everyone else has kind of trampled to death, where I think that, you can start exploring these things as a late elementary school kid, as a middle school, in high school, and then not have to wait until your 20s to start figuring out who you are. Life's short. Like, why are you going to wait till you're 20 and waste all of that time? Like, you can do whatever you want in your 20s, but you don't have to wait until then to start figuring out what you want to do.
Right. And it needs to be this more natural progression. So if you guys, feel strongly about this industry and the lack of people interested in it and the lack of youth, then give this a listen. Let us know what you think. We want to engage with you guys on this on social media and talk about, how we truly make a bigger impact in the industry, and doing it at an earlier age and what that might look like. I don't remember if we talked about it, but like, I dug into him hard, and it's like, the color, like he talked about the color. He was like, I looked at like what the best colors are for kids, and orange and blue are like the most comforting for them. And he's like, and I also wanted to have, things that they would want to buy. So I created these like orange glasses and the hat and the suspenders, because I knew if I wore them every day, they would want to buy them, and I could also sell them. And you can't just go out and buy orange suspenders somewhere. You'd have to buy my suspenders. Unless
you're a hunter. It's it's interesting to think about what kind of piques children's interests, or like what sticks out to them. And I can remember pretty vividly things that as a child just like were very cool to me, or I liked, and maybe it was the sound of them, watching people do stuff. I remember even being little, like people using a cash register to me was like so sick. Like I just wanted, I wanted to work a cat, or even like the rotary phones that, you would like put the number, like they just seemed, you'd watch people do that and they seemed so cool. Or like somebody who was working on a you remember the old calculators that had the
paper
on it, and like
my dad had one.
I guess it's like the no, I forget what that's called off the top of my head right now.
ASMR.
But then like colors and the way things looked, and I can remember like baseball players that I just liked the way their uniform or their cleats were or whatever. It definitely, there's things that stand out to kids. And it's funny you say that, because my kids never comment anything on like what I'm wearing, clothes, what I look like, but like both of them immediately yesterday were like, "Hey, I like your hat." Like immediately. And then we're like, "Hey, can I try it on?"
Right. If it was a black hat, it would mean nothing.
Yeah, no, not at all. Like, and I have a bunch of different hats, but they just like really like this one.
It's weird. Like why do we lose that?
I don't know. It's the same reason why, like, as a kid, you would go outside and just play and roll around and run, and it was just fun.
It's funny, like I keep sitting here thinking about the calculator with the paper roll on it. My dad had it forever, and I worked in his business when I was 11 till I was 21, and he had one on the desk. And when we would ring up a customer, I would use that. And then, like, pump out numbers, and it was just it was like a thing, it's like there's another calculator right there that I could add up, but this one printed it out as I added up, so I could go back and then make sure that I got everything. I didn't miss something.
Watching my dad shave, I used to like, that used to stick out to me as something that I would really want to do, and now I haven't shaved with the razor since I was like before Selby.
How do you line up?
I just use a buzzer.
Oh.
I'm not like particular. I have a lot of hair on my head, but the rest of my body, I pretty much don't grow hair. But like that.
Got it.
This is my beard. This is the shape of it. Like, that's it.
Got it.
It gets a few stragglers.
See, I grow like up
I
here.
don't. Like I can't grow. None of the listeners can see this, but this is probably like 3 weeks of not shaving.
Oh, so you always have
it just grows in like that. I don't know. It grows in all naturally white trash like that.
I get like super like white right here.
Yeah.
And every time, and Meg's trained Marley to tell me I have gray hair.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what?
I have a few.
I do. I was like, you know what? And I told Meg, I was like, I'm gonna dye my hair white. She's like, why would you do that? I'm like, I'm just gonna own it. And I have white hair right now. 34 years old. White.
I feel like I know a handful of people who are prematurely gray, and it's a pretty good look.
If
it's like gray, like my mom has silver gray hair, and my dad just has like a lot of darker gray randoms.
I feel like that looks like you're just stressed out. Like when you have patches of gray or like gray filtering in, I'm like, you're just super stressed.
It's but I don't mind. I just have random, but I have so much hair that I feel like even if I do get gray hair, it's going to take a long time to thin out the rest of my hair that's normal colored. Yeah, but there's so many things I think about as a kid that, like, even looking back at like bikes that I wanted and stuff, and I remember just obsessing over little things on them and the way they looked or the components that they had on them, and just thinking they were
like the
so
way the brake
sick.
lever would work, or if it was like, I remember one of the bikes I had, it was a BMX bike, and like the brake lever was shorter, but it was bent out, so you could like kind of hold on to it weird and use it to probably do freestyle or some shit, but it was, it was cool. Like, it was it was just like a thing.
No, for sure.
And Mike Rowe had said on that interview a couple weeks ago, he talked about like when we were kids, I remember having like a whole library of VHS tapes of just construction work. And I mean, it was just like, there was no one talking.
Yeah.
And it was just like a concrete truck pulling up and placing a foundation, or, an excavator digging a hole. Like, actually, perfect example, like BuildWit, like Aaron's videos on YouTube. They are ASMR.
Yeah.
And there's one, and my kids will watch it. So there's one, it's a dragline machine, and I don't know if you've ever seen a dragline machine, but when you watch the video, it's like, oh, that's cool. He drops the bucket in the sand and he's dragging it through the water and pulling. You don't realize the scale of it at all until he posts a photo of it on Instagram, and his truck fits in it by like 3 times.
Yeah, it's insane.
But my kids will just sit there and they'll stare at it, and it's like there's no one talking. It's just this bucket being dragged through the water and then spinning around and dumping the sand out and doing it over and over. And we watched another video. It was 15 minutes long. It was an excavator filling 15 dump trucks. That's it. Dig, dump, move on.
I would kind of still watch that though.
Same. So I guess that's my point. Is I was on the couch too, like, mouth open, not realizing how enamored I am with this. But it's the same. It's just
I'd have to. I feel like I'm somewhat on the spot, but I know that there's things. I watch my kids, and I watch especially Tilly, and it would make more sense because she's much more like me personality wise than Selby is. But I watch her, and when she likes something, I understand like the level that she likes it, and there's like this intensity there, and it's almost as if you can't explain it, but like I get it for her. And it could be something as silly as us walking through a store and she sees, like, she calls them squishies, stuffies, like a little stuffed animal, and she'll just like need it, and there's just something within it or with it that speaks to her. And if I get it for her, it's like she'll carry that thing around until the dogs chew it up, and like she'll wake up and be like, wait, where is it? And I do recall a lot of things like that, even wrestling, and like what shoes I wanted, and wanting to get them, and getting catalogs and looking at them. And like you're just looking at a picture, but I would look at it for so long and be like, everything about this is perfect.
Dude, the shoe thing is funny. Like with kids, they get new shoes, and it's like, watch how fast I can run. And I'm like, it's so funny. But you know what? What's so similar is when you wash your truck, don't you feel like
oil change?
It runs better?
I'm like,
It's like, man, I'm gonna
drive this thing around.
This thing's fast, man. This thing's crude. You know what? Maybe the wind doesn't grab on the dirt, on the paint anymore. Like this thing seems. I don't need a new truck anymore.
Yeah.
And every time I get my truck detailed, it's like, I'm like, why would I get a new truck? This thing's mint condition. The moment it's dirty right now, and I all I've been thinking about all day is how I want to go to the car wash when I get out of work today. And I'm like, because it just pisses me off.
So I think kind of looking back on, like you said, why doesn't that happen as an adult anymore? And I think it does. At least with me, it does to a certain extent. But then when I actually partake in the activity or whatever was very intriguing to me, it's not as exciting as when I was a kid.
This podcast is brought to you by Duration Molding and Millwork.
Nick, I don't know if you've been on Duration's Instagram lately. It's Duration Molding and Millwork, all one word, no hyphens or anything. But they posted last week about like basically what would be a traditional rake or cornice detail on a house, where you have your eaves and your soffits all tying in together. And a lot of times people will use a crown molding there, where they wrap from... Basically, you're taking a vertical plane and transitioning to horizontal. And there's a couple of ways to do that. There's a few articles on that you can dig into if you want to on your own. But there's a traditional cornice detail, and then what would be like a poor man's cornice detail, where they're terminating, resolving that crown into a flat, and then that's your vertical portion, and then just making an outside corner that dies into. But what was traditionally done when people were more of craftsmen and taking time to do things, right now it would require a higher budget typically, is they're creating two different profiles of crown molding. So you had the vertical crown that was running down your rake, and then the crown that was on your soffits would be a different profile. So when you mitered them together, you know, transitioning from a vertical to a horizontal, you actually have two different planes and profiles that are making that work. And Duration just posted how they were using their CNC and some software to create TrueX molding, crown molding with two different profiles to make those transitions based on a specific roof slope and a specific profile that they're tying into, which to me was crazy, because I feel like usually you're leaving that decision up to a carpenter in the field, or nobody's sorting that out, and you have somebody rolling crown or putting it together and then sanding the two profiles to make it look okay and say, hey, that's 35 feet up in the air, it's good enough. Where you can send these details over to Duration, and they can actually figure out what those two profiles need to be for your rake and your horizontal crown molding, and fabricate that in the shop for you. So all you have to do is miter it at that point. And I was super excited about that, because that's a very classic detail that I see done incorrectly a lot. And to see them taking the time to show people how, you know, what the right way is, was pretty cool to me.
I didn't know the concept of raking crown until probably, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, and I had always wondered how you transitioned from, you know, that front piece and then from the fascia going up to the rake. And when you realize that it's a completely different profile that just happens to work when you miter it, it's super interesting.
Yeah, because typically you need to make a vertical turn and a horizontal turn. And you guys will have to look on their Instagram, but like the easiest way to think about this would be kind of when you're coming down a wall where there's a staircase, and you're looking to wrap that same wall with trim or quarter round. A lot of times you'll notice on that skirt that it's going to have a filler that's going to transition from the vertical coming down the wall to a horizontal to be able to make that turn around the wall. It's the same exact principle with the crown molding. You cannot make that cut with a single profile of trim and just a single cut. You have to make two turns, and they're getting rid of that by milling two different profiles that'll work for you. Probably complicated. Everyone's probably super confused right now. But if you know, you're like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. But check it out on their Instagram page. It's their last post.
Yeah, Duration Molding and Millwork for Instagram. And if you want to learn more about where to buy this stuff, durationmillwork.com. This podcast is brought to you by Rockwool. So you've heard us talk about it before, the R-Class building program. It's something that if you guys aren't already involved with, you got to get involved with. Beyond just the value of, you know, the swag box, which I talk about every week, and the free flannel shirt, which Rockwool's probably going to reach out to us and say, stop advertising that, we're running out of flannel. It's about the community, and it's about the ability to connect with not only the technical team at Rockwool, but also, you know, some of the reps that are in the field. Dan Edelman, Nick Stone, which is a great last name for Stonewall Insulation. But they, you know, if you're on their Instagram, Rockwool NA, you'll see that they've been out on some of these job sites, and they've actually worked with us on our job sites to make sure that our details are done well. I mean, I don't know if I've told this particular story, but we actually had two details on a job that we actually posted about in a video, and Rockwool's team reached out and said, "Hey Nick, FYI, you're headed in the right direction, but you made a pretty critical error." And, you know, obviously I don't like hearing that, but, you know, hey, walk me through it. And they basically sent me some details, did a sketch for me, and said, these are the things you need to take into consideration. Got right back to us, and you know, that was huge. And what that, like, they're not only there for support, but they're paying attention. Like, they're watching what we're all doing, and I can only believe that, you know, they're doing it to make sure that they're protecting our investment. You know, make sure that their product, you know, operates the way it should, because we don't want, you know, a failure to be, you know, blamed on a particular product. But also, you know, they understand that the challenges we're facing if we're talking about it and seeing our projects come together. So if you guys want to join the R-Class program, rockwoolna.com/R-Class. I'm sorry, rockwool.com/R-Class. join that program, I believe, and they've already given one away. I believe that they're going to be running another promo where you can enter for the chance to win an entire house worth of insulation.
A lot of insulation.
That's a lot of insulation. I've seen an entire house get delivered, and we did not have a forklift on site. It's a lot.
Maybe they should give away a forklift. There's a specific guy on YouTube who will post and make stories about like dirt bike maintenance and working on things, and like as he's explaining it and he's using metal tools to touch certain things, and it's like all of the sounds and the way it comes together, it's interesting to watch. And then you go out there and you do it, and it's like hot and dirty and you oil all over you. I'm like, yeah, this isn't as much fun as watching somebody do this.
It's like when they drain an oil, like the oil out of the bike, and it lands perfectly in the pan, and you go to do it and you don't line it up correctly, and now it's all over the floor.
You kick the pan. So you're in a rush. I feel like there's so many things like that when I was a kid. Again, like the phones, and then I remember even trash picking people's old computers and like setting them up to pretend they were computers, and just like, remember when the computer keys were, I guess, desktops, before Macs, you could like pull the buttons off them, but they made a lot of, or like a typewriter, dude, watching somebody on a typewriter. But it was like you would hear people typing so fast, and I remember pretending to type and not actually, just like pressing the buttons all over randomly.
Well, like a kid does now. It's like a kid just like wants to hear the noise, so they're just like, like slamming their hands all over.
Which actually makes me think of something, and I'm curious. Have you ever had your kids talk on the phone? Not speakerphone and not FaceTime?
Yes, and Marley does it pretend.
Okay.
She'll hold the phone and have a full-blown conversation with someone that isn't on the other line.
Does Meg talk on the phone a lot?
Yeah. So she's on the phone a lot, and like usually holding it with her shoulder. Yeah. Or, she's not a speakerphone talker, but it's so. And I'm not sure where you're going with it, but for me, like I look at Marley, I'm like, does she think that when Meg is talking that there's no one on the other end? Like, does she think that Meg is making up a conversation?
No, I think she's just imitating what she sees. I think she understands. Because so where that's coming from is my kids are terrible at talking on the phone. Like, they don't know how to do it. So Rachel and I left to run some errands last night, and the girls were just tired and kind of out of it, and we were like, oh, we'll grab dinner while we're out, and neither one of them wanted to go. So I was like, you know what, screw it. Selby's going into 4th grade. I was like, here's my cell phone, if you need anything, call mommy, we're going to run errands. So we went on our way for like an hour and a half, and left the girls home without us. And Rachel called Selby just twice to make sure, like, hey, what's up, everything good? Because we really haven't left them ever like alone and our neighbors are on vacation right now, so but they don't know how to, and I've always noticed they don't know how to talk on the phone. So we call and Selby goes, yeah, and we're like, that's how she picks up the phone. And like, I asked Rachel, I said, when you were younger and you picked up, like, I distinctly remember saying, hello, who is this, please? That was like what my parents said, so that's what we said. Or like, I know a lot of families be like, so-and-so household, may I ask who's calling, before caller ID and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what we would say. May I ask
who's
calling?
Like
Hi.
That was just like automatic when you answer the phone.
Yeah.
And so Selby's just like, yeah. And we're like, hey, are you okay? Yeah. What's up? Like, there's no cadence, no back and forth. And I know they were watching TV, but still, when Rachel takes them and goes somewhere, or if I call Rachel when she's traveling, they don't know how to hold a phone. They don't know. And Rachel and I aren't huge phone talkers, so we're not walking around the house talking on the phone. It's just not what we do. But we realized last night coming home, like, Selby wouldn't talk on the phone. You had to pull teeth to get answers out of her. And then we're like, all right, we'll be home in 15 minutes. And she hung up and didn't even say bye. And we're like, I think we need to teach our kids how to talk on the phone. And, we text so much, and we're not interacting with people via, like, it was a house phone when we were growing up. And I was like, they don't even know how to talk on a phone. Like, no, they don't understand how to put it to your ear, that like you don't have to switch it from your ear to your mouth. Even because they're like so used to FaceTime where you're just holding the phone out. And it's just, I mean, it's crazy how much things have changed, but like that's the only way we would communicate, was talking on the phone, a house phone, because there weren't cell phones either.
Right. Yeah. I guess my kids do definitely talk on FaceTime more, and it's not, Marley might imitate Meg on the phone, but I don't know if she's ever talked to anyone on the phone.
My kids like, don't know how. Like, no idea. I guess they've never seen anyone do it.
Yeah. Marley Meg had this old phone, and Marley asked if she could have it. So she set it up and like connected to Wi-Fi and only had my contact. So I would get text messages from Marley, but they were just like letters and emojis. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, and I would write back, hi Marley. But then we took the phone one day, and she had recorded selfie videos and like addressing an audience.
YouTube.
Like, hey guys, it's Marley. This is my brother Reed. Today we're gonna show you guys our stuffed animals. And I'm like, where?
YouTube. Do your kids watch YouTube?
Learning? Not really.
I mean, I guess there are probably other shows like it, but I know my kids do that, and they'll be like, even to the point where they say like, subscribe. So like they're straight up watching YouTube videos of people doing that, and it's so bad because you'll just go. It's more so on Rachel's phone because I don't like them being on phone. So I think Rachel has always been like, all right, I need 5 minutes, like whatever, just take my phone.
It's similar.
Yeah, so like they're never. I don't like people going on my phone. It's like you're gonna touch something or I don't know. I don't like it. So they typically aren't on my phone. But we'll find Rachel will send me all of a sudden during the day like pictures or videos that the girls took on their phone that she didn't know about, where they're just filming themselves. They're so funny too, like hilarious.
It's so funny, but it's also like frightening.
That's the world we live in.
And Meg and I were like, we could literally post this stuff on YouTube, and it would probably crush. But
no, I think about that all the time. Where I'm very grateful that we grew up. When I was a sophomore in high school, I think is when people, like kids, first started getting cell phones. Like I don't think I had a phone until I started driving, which would have been junior year. And still at that point, it was phone calls. You had limited minutes. Like you could talk to people within your network for a certain amount of minutes. Text messaging was not a thing. I think my senior year of high school, text messaging first had started, and then it was like T9 Word. But it just wasn't a thing. But I'm so glad that there was not a way to document the shit that I did, because like it's just good that it's not documented. I'm so happy that it's not documented.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I also it also is frustrating that everything gets documented now. Like I say that knowing that like I document everything we do from a professional side, but there's like the personal side, even just like, when my wife and I go out and like I'll say something stupid, I'm like, why are you filming me? I'm like, I don't want, like, that was a joke for you, not anyone else. And now I know like 100 of your girlfriends are all going to see that video of me saying something stupid.
No, I also think it like everyone's so concerned with documenting life that they're not being present in life. It's like, right. I have to take a picture of this so that I can post this on Facebook or Instagram.
Like fireworks. Yeah. I'm like, what are you going to do with that video?
Or like when where it's like 100 degrees and everyone's just posting their thermostat in their car.
Cue
snow.
the thermostat photos.
But yeah, everyone's like so concerned with documenting it so that they can share it with everyone that it's like, maybe you should just document it in your mind. Because how often really are you going back and like, I'm going to look at this from this long ago or that. And like, I'll look at pictures, but
I was notoriously bad for, like, I go through my phone and not have any pictures of my kids. And so recently, only because, like, Meg has, I mean, if she does, like, a birthday montage for me, she pulls up photos that I'm like, where did you get that? I'm like, I don't, and actually, now I have pictures of my kids and none of my wife. And I'm like, all right, like, I want these for me. Like, I want, like, not because I want to post them. It's like, I want to be able to go back and see the timeline of my kids growing up. Because that is the cool part of what we have today. Where it's like, you know, if I go back to, like, hey, Mom, do you have any photos of me when I was a kid? Or, like, we have some high 8 tapes, which I hope we still have because some of them are hilarious. But, like, photos, like, they're few and far between.
Yeah.
Now it's like you can take a photo of your kid every day, and then 20 years from now, literally have this, like, flip book of growth day by day.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, I feel like my photos probably aren't as curated and good as they can be because it's free. Where it's not, you're not like shooting on film where, like, don't waste, 6 takes on that one thing. But I look, like you said, when it's the girl's birthday, I'll go and be like, I'm going to look up, photos I have of the girls. And they're typically just when they were doing something dumb. Like, I have a picture of Tilly from the other day, completely naked, shoes and a butterfly net over her head, like, watching TV. And, like, that's the stuff that I document because I'm like, this is going to be good, when they're like 15, 16. And I'm like, here's Tilly when she was little. But I have to go steal photos from Rachel. And I can attribute a lot of that, which is sometimes why I even don't like posting work photos anymore, because you're looking for the perfect photo where it, like, looks right and the lighting's right. And it's so much work to do right that I oftentimes just take a bunch and then I'll go back and pick something afterwards and not really look how it is appearing on camera. Like, I'll make that decision later. And with the kids, it just gives me anxiety because I'm like, it's like trying to take a picture of a dog where they're just all over the place. And I'm like, just sit still. And then this isn't fun anymore. Like, you guys were cute and it was fun. Your hair looked good. Now you're just annoying me. I don't even want a picture anymore. So I just give up on it and, like, don't even take pictures of them when they're cute. I only take them when they're doing dumb stuff, acting funny, or look ridiculous.
Let's go back to kind of kids and their interest in, like, process, like the whole calculator thing, and I feel like, what we talked about a couple weeks ago, and how, we need to make a bigger effort with kids and, like, put this into place so kids are, we start correcting the industry, right? Correcting the interest in it. And, even all the way back to Blippi, like, and what kids are interested in. It's the first thing you said in this episode was, it's interesting what kids get attracted to. And it's the easiest thing to relate to is, like, TV. And Blippi's a great example. If you don't know who Blippi is, you probably don't have kids that are under the age of 5. But he is this guy on YouTube that essentially created a show out of pure, like, response to the shit that his nephew was watching on YouTube that was just crappy quality. And he said, I can do this in better quality. And but invested the time to understand how to, like, grab a kid's attention. And as an adult, super annoying.
Very.
Like, you watch it and you're like, how does anyone,
but not as annoying as the ones where they're doing that and it's not as well produced.
Very true. And there's another one that they watched that it's literally a dad with his cell phone filming his kids in his backyard. But you're like, why are they so interested in this? And it's the same reason that they would be interested in being in that backyard, picking up that Tonka truck and filling it with leaves and pushing it around the backyard. they don't have that Tonka truck in front of them, so they're going to watch someone else do it. And I think about, like, all right, how can we take that and attribute it to our industry? It's like getting them interested in not only just the process or pushing that dump truck around, but what if we started teaching them what that dump truck was, or the parts of it, or how the bed lifted up, or why it lifted up, or even as deep as, hey, you know, these are the things that you got to be safe around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times we almost discredit their ability to comprehend, understand, and process. And that a lot of times, even at an early age, it's much more dynamic and complex than you really give them credit for. Like, I think they can handle a lot more than we think they can.
Reed's 4 years old, turned 4 in June. He asked my wife the other day if Meg knew how a sailboat worked. and she was like, I mean, yeah. And he walked through technically how a sailboat worked. Like the things that were on the sailboat, how it moved, how they would steer the boat, because he watched it on a show.
It's just what speaks to them.
And they walk.
Like, if it's something that interests them and kind of sparks that desire for education and to learn, it doesn't matter what it could be. Like, someone might, like, Selby likes stuff with bugs and insects, and it interests her, and she'll go off on deep dives into that type of stuff where it's like no 7-8-year-old needs to know that crap, but it interests her, and she was exposed to it at some point, and she took a liking to it. Mm-hmm. And I think, even as you're saying, with our industry, construction, there's not a lot of exposure past like the toddler age. I feel like with boys, where they want to see trucks all the time, there's not an exposure to that, except for when families hire someone to come work on their house, and a lot of kids take to that and are very interested in that.
And that is, in my opinion, the moment in time that they develop a respect or no respect for that particular trade, based on their families' interaction.
That's what I was going to say, because like, they're not going to make a decision they will make a decision whether they like it or not, or it interests them, but that's just that's like a knee-jerk reaction. That's something innate within them where they're like, yeah, this is interesting to me.
Yeah, this is different. What's going on? Why is he ripping that thing off the wall?
But the thought to pursue that or not, or how that kind of stacks up in a social setting, that's completely the environment around them. Because I could see a lot of the customers that I work for where the kids are super interested, and if they are, I'm not engaging with them to try and like make them become a carpenter or make them become a contractor. I'm just like, they want to know and they understand, and I want to take the time and feel like I'm being a decent adult and a decent human being. And I also think it's important for your customers to understand that you can interact with their children. But I could see a lot of customers that I work for, the kids being interested in them. The next conversation would be like, yeah, but you don't want to do that. There's a lot easier ways to make money.
Right.
So yeah, I think the exposure, definitely one thing, and then changing the mindset around that. But yeah, there's tons of kids who like love. One of my customers has twins. One special needs, has autism, like nonverbal, and the other one is fine. No issues as far as special needs or anything. He's in like normal schooling, but the one who does not have any doesn't need any help is very engaged and very interested, And it took the one with autism a lot longer to kind of include himself in what I was doing. But then when he finally warmed up, I gave him a paintbrush so that like he couldn't hurt himself or anyone else, and let him like walk around with that. And you can tell that he was super interested in it, and he didn't know how to communicate that. And like, obviously I couldn't tap into that, but you could tell even on that very basic elementary level that, you know, they're like 4 years old, that it's something, watching that is intriguing to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is where, you know, especially Reed, and like Marley never had an interest in, I mean, I shouldn't say that. She was always like interested in seeing trucks and construction stuff, but it wasn't something that she like gravitated towards. Reed, like day one,
boy
was like, yeah, like show me an excavator. But Indy now is like all about it. She's 1.5, but an excavator. Like we were walking down the street the other day, and she was and like pointing at it. And I'm like, an excavator, and she's like freaking out. I'm like, okay, I'm all right. Let's, you know. And we had they were doing street work in front of our house the other day, and they all heard it, and they were like, shut the TV off. Let's go outside and watch them.
Remember when I stayed at your house and we watched the guys doing road work for like all night?
We were like children. You and I stood at that window. No, you and I stood at the window, narrating. Picture this: there's two grown men on the third floor of a building narrating an electrical service being replaced in the neighboring home. That's Tyler and I for hours.
Yeah, I mean, it was utility work, and you could tell everything just kept going wrong. So it was like, let's try this. That didn't work. This project just got bigger. Bring another truck in. Oh, this isn't going to work. Shut this down. We're going to have to bring in these tools. And
and Meg is like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, this is just really interesting. But it is. It's yeah, I don't know. I guess like I constantly think about my kids, and I want them to be exposed to it, but also encouraged. But from a bigger perspective, it's like these are the opportunities that we need to invest in. Where it's like going back to that video, I forget what it was called, and man, I wonder if my mom has this stuff in like a box somewhere. But I just remember it was a blue VHS, like it came in a paper. Remember how the VHS used to be in like the paper cases
with like the cutout on the side of it, so you could grab it and pull it out.
Yep. Well, I think it was in the bottom. I don't know. Either way, and it had yellow lettering, and I would plop it in, and it was just hours of just different construction sites, and that was where like and when we drove by stuff in real life, you know, my parents were always super supportive of that. They were like, you know, I was like, hey, there's a development there. Do you mind if we drive down it? And I would just look out the window and see homes being built. It was all the time. And when we had contractors over the house, I was always, you know, I'd rush down and I would just sit there. And I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but you know, I'll never forget. I don't remember the scenario, but my mom tells the story is that we had a contractor over, and I was down in the basement. They were doing the basement over. And the contractor walked upstairs and was like, hey, man, can you get your kid out of here? Like, he's driving me crazy. He's asking like 100 questions. And my parents fired him. It was like, no, like he's obviously interested. Like, you can screw. And then they hired this guy, Bob Dennison. It was his name. And he was an older guy. And he was definitely one of those guys that like probably didn't like kids. You know, he just had that like rough and gruff. But he drove a mint green and silver F-150, like the square body style, and everything was built. Like his toolboxes, he built. Like he had all these stools and ladders, he built them. And I showed an interest to the point you talk about like things you gravitate towards. He wore overalls, and I found a pair of painting overalls in the basement that my dad had for whatever reason, and I wore them. I would rush home from school. I would change into these overalls, and then I would go and sit next to him and just ask him questions. And he was super, like he was like, this guy, you know, he actually started like taking a liking to me and answering my questions and walking me through things and explaining why he did things. and he continued to work on my house forever. But my parents were always supportive of that, and my parent, and they never, like, they knew that I loved this.
Well, that's kind of the perplexing part about, I guess, like, humanity, society, culture, where as our kids are younger, and like my kids are very different from each other, and they have different likes, they have different interests, different ways that they process the world, themselves, they interact with other people. They're just completely different people. And what Selby does is completely different than what Tilly does. But you spend so much time trying to expose your kids to things that they may find interesting. Hobbies, sports, art, all different things at camp. They can try all of these like after school programs where it's like, hey, we're going to do needlepoint, we're going to do woodwork, whatever it may be. You're looking to expose your kids to all this. What sport do you like? We're going to try 8 different sports to see which one you like and play 2 per season. And it's like, why aren't we exposing them? I don't know. Why aren't we exposing them to more useful, where it's like, I understand sports and I understand the socialization, but it's like you're trying to jam shit down their throat because, like, that's what you did or that's what everyone else does. And, like, Selby loves playing softball. She loves that. She loves riding her dirt bike. And I don't, like, that's what she's interested in right now. I'm not going to throw a bunch of things in front of her, but Tilly's not really interested in sports, and she's a little harder to read. And why are we not, as parents, exposing her to more useful skill sets or things that she might be interested in down the road? Because, yeah, she's 6 now, and that may seem as though she's really young, but, like, 10 years, she'll be 16 and should be expecting to think about what she wants to do for the rest of her life. And I don't know about you, but, like, 10 years really flies by right now. And it doesn't as a kid, but something that you plant within them now, within 10 years may grow into something completely larger. And, like, I do think that we don't give our kids and the younger generation enough credit as to, like, hey, they can handle this. Like you're saying, exposing them to trades or how the mechanics of a dump truck or an excavator or tools, or like why you choose specific nails or fasteners, like, that's crap that kids would eat up.
And they do.
Yeah.
Like, there's there's things out there that's doing it. And I'm gonna keep using the reference of Blippi, but
we're gonna get him on the podcast.
Let's get him on. I think side story. I think he stepped away from the show.
He's got
There's
a double
new host. No, he's flipping houses.
Flippy. We talked about that.
Oh yeah, Flippy.
So who's doing Blippi?
It's another kid, and which is bizarre. He sounds just like him. I walked in the room the other day. I'm like, that's a different Blippi, and Reed looks at me. He's like, what? I'm like, dude, you got to know that's not the same.
You just
Blippi.
ruined his entire life.
You
basically told him Santa Claus wasn't real.
No, I think Reed was just like, he's like, this guy's been around long enough. They just, it's just a new guy. Like, it's not new anymore. He's not new anymore. He's just, that's who Blippi is now. But my point is I remember watching, like, there's a dirt bike episode.
Yeah, my hat is kind of like Blippi. That's cool.
Yeah. But he does his dirt bike episode, but he talks about, like, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm exaggerating. But I know he talks about, like, the oil and what the oil does and how you put the oil in and how you put fuel in it. And I want to say he talks about 2-stroke versus 4-stroke. It's like, and he talks about it in a way that, if, like, Meg probably doesn't know what a 2-stroke versus 4-stroke is, or what it means, or that one you have to mix the oil with the gas and the other you don't, right? But they walk through it in a way in that show where it's like, my wife just learned something and my 4-year-old just learned something, and this is and unfortunately, guys, you didn't Travis from Catalyst Built, we recorded with him, and the podcast audio failed to upload. So we are very sorry about that, specifically to Travis. But this is where he started. He really talked about educating these kids at a younger age, and it really sent me down this path of thought where we are trying to counteract 20 years of education by educating people when they're 20, 30 years old. Where it's like everything, and I say we, I mean like the Modern Craftsman, I mean social media, I mean our YouTube channel. Like, we're trying to educate people so late in life.
Yeah.
And because we're trying to counteract it. And, it's on that same tune, it's insane to me the amount of, my wife's friends are like, man, I just wish my husband knew a little bit of what Nick knows. And meanwhile, this guy's a successful finance guy that makes a ton of money and very successful. But he's like, I couldn't tell you how to change literally change a light bulb or check a breaker. And so on that same tune, this is where my thought led, and Tyler and I have talked about this off air, is that we need to consider simplifying some of this education. Like, I mean, to the basics. And do it in a way, like, yeah, maybe we're not going to teach a kid how to go check a circuit breaker. But maybe we can introduce what the circuit breaker is and why it's there and what it means when it goes off. So when that kid's sitting in the living room and his mom's vacuuming and all of a sudden they lose power, your 4-year-old's going to say, you probably popped the circuit breaker. And they're going to be like, and who knows?
If it's
that
not
mom
that,
might not
check
even
if there's
know.
a GFI that they tapped into. It might be a loose. We might have a loose neutral.
I know I know this sounds so like silly and almost minor, but this, like, I do think that if we actually put that little effort into teaching these elementary items at a young age, it's going to impact the 4-year-old just as much as it's going to impact the 14-year-old and the 20.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, by the time you're age 16 or so and you're kind of entering the workforce, there's a lot of areas in the world where that's like the age where you start working and start looking to provide. It's too late, and everything that's out there, even you look at magazines, YouTube tutorials, while it may to you and me, Nick, seem elementary, like the articles that are out there, the how-tos that are out there, in the grand scheme of things, it's relatively high level, where if you were able to kind of create the engagement and expose kids to these things at a much younger age, I think that like thirst and hunger for the knowledge will grow so much more, because you're not going to hand a 4-year-old a fine home building magazine and expect them to be interested in it. It's like, although there's elementary stuff in there, there's more complex stuff in there. It's all marketable stuff that they're looking to sell and have ads placed within and create, draw attention to. It's the same way social media, you're looking for the engagement and just to get eyes on that, it's not, that doesn't translate to a younger crowd. It doesn't translate to somebody who has no matter how elementary those articles, they are not written for 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old kids.
No.
And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I also read something the other day that said most people, like the majority of the population, can't read past the 5th grade level.
Really?
It's something, or maybe 8th grade. But the point being is that, you're absolutely right. These articles, if anything, they're becoming more and more complex.
Especially with like energy standards and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, think about our podcast last week with the guys from MCH up in Canada. And he's talking about, he had said like an equation in the middle of that podcast. It was like, what the hell was it? Kilowatts per hour per annual or something like that. And he said it twice, and I'm like, I mean, that's even over my head. I mean, I get it. I know what he's referencing, but I don't know what that equation is, nor do I know exactly what how it's applied to
I also
building.
think that like we're at the point, once you're an adult, right, and you're exposed to something like that, in order for you to pursue that, you need to give up something else. There's only so many hours in a day. Correct. So even like the specific instance where you're exposed to this equation, for you to wrap your head around that, you need to give up something else in your life to take the time to look into that and figure out what it is. So typically that's only happening when you run into that situation and you need an answer for that. You're not just like, curiosity isn't getting the best of you and you're like, you know what? With my before I go to my meeting tomorrow, I'm going to show up 20 minutes late and I'm going to look up what he was talking about. So
right. Or the vacuum trip, like I don't have any power, I was vacuuming. Call
exactly. But like
it's like, have you checked the circuit breaker? Nope, but I don't have time for that either.
But like as a child, if you're curious in something, you don't have to give up something else to feed that curiosity, right? It's like you have school you have to go to, you have some sports and some activities, but like it's all about curiosity when you're a kid. It's all about discovery and looking for new things and, just creating and living life. And you don't have a million things on your plate and on your mind. So when a child or a young boy or girl is exposed to something that they don't understand and they want to learn about it, they start asking questions. And like, they just follow that itch and they don't have to sacrifice something else in order to pursue that. So that's really, I feel as though the best opportunity to create that spark and then be the fuel to that flame where it's like, yeah, they're interested. Now let's keep throwing wood on this baby right now. Because 16, 17, where you're like, oh wait, I need a car. I have to pay for a cell phone. My parents are making me pay for insurance. I have to start saving for college. Then I need to figure out what do I want to do with my life. It's almost, you start prioritizing at that point, and it's less about what intrigues you and what you're interested in, and more about how am I going to make money? What's going to be the most lucrative career for me, that I'm going to be able to have the things that I want. And I feel as though you start trading your curiosity, your wants, and your desires for what life is kind of expected of you.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of, we talk about self-education as an adult as well, and this, the argument could be like, well, my kid doesn't need to know electrical or doesn't need to know trade. It's not about forcing this stuff either. It's truly just letting them choose what they want to learn. Like, they're watching these TV shows and all of a sudden they don't want to watch Blip anymore. They want to watch Paw Patrol. It's like, all right, now they're going to watch Paw Patrol and they're going to learn, like, I don't know what they're going to learn from that show, but they've shifted their attention to that show instead.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's not some bullshit show that just, that they learn to fight with their sibling on, but there's
like the
those
floor's
two.
Lava.
Is that
a real show?
I know it's a real show, and I know my kids have watched it. Is it a bad show?
I would imagine. I'm pretty sure they just like run and jump across stuff and like don't want to touch the floor because it's make-believe lava.
Very true. That is, they've been on the kitchen table saying
but all right, so like my kids watch baking shows. Like, I don't bake.
Dude, the junior baking?
Rachel doesn't bake, but like that's an interest in them.
Marley would, for like a month she was like, I want to watch the junior baking show.
Yeah, so what's like, different from exposing them to something like baking's not going to get them a scholarship, Like, it's,
well, I think my point is, like, I think what we're both saying is they chose that. I didn't say, hey, go watch the junior baking show. I want you to be
they don't see Rachel and myself baking. It just like something clicked with them that they liked it. And that's a career path. That's a hobby. Maybe you want to get into the food industry. Maybe you want to write. Eventually you turn into like, like a writer, a food critic, something like that. But like that was the exposure, that was the catalyst for that desire and that passion. And it's no different than with what we do, where it's like, a TV show where kids, like, you give them a certain amount of materials and you're like, hey, you have to build this model and you have this amount of time to do it. I feel like my kids would eat that up.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, thinking about some of the hot topics or hot things that people talk about in the sense of, when they're struggling to find out what they want to do, everyone's like, just do what you love. Just do what you're passionate about. And when you're told that when you're 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years old, it's like, most people are like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. And it's because they were, this is obviously my opinion, but like, because they were stripped from it. Because at some point in their life, they like were staring out the window and looking at the excavator ripping up the road, and they were told that that's not a good career.
Yeah.
Or you don't want to do that. That's hard work. Or you're going to break your back. Or your father did that, and look at him now. He's never home. Like whatever it is, like that was something that at some point in their life that they were interested in.
Yeah.
And it's and kind of allowing the kid to your kids to navigate that path on their own. Obviously with some bumpers, right? You give them some guide rails and make sure that they're heading in a good direction.
Don't just hand them a grinder,
Right. That's probably a pretty
But speaking
bad
of
idea.
Hot Topic, did we tell everyone they're actually sponsoring this episode?
We did
No,
not.
they're not, but that would be sick. Get some like
That would be
Jenkos
sick.
and stuff.
Do they still is Hot Topic still
I would
a store?
imagine they're sponsoring us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely down to explore that more.
I like this conversation. I like the fact that we're thinking about a younger generation, and because I think that there is so much pressure on, again, course correcting someone's thought later in life, where I think you hit it spot on, is that now you're making sacrifices, and oftentimes those sacrifices affect your well-being. It's like, just do what you're passionate about, eat ramen for a year and just go figure it, sleep on your friend's couch and grind it out, and just focus on what you're really passionate about. It's like, that's really hard to do when you got a kid or 3 kids or whatever it is, or just maybe you don't have any kids and you're single, but you still don't want to sleep on your friend's couch because you're in a career that pays you 6 figures a year.
Yeah, I also think that just getting into our industry at 16 is difficult. Getting into our industry at 25 is even more difficult. I think that it's not the most welcoming industry in the world. Everyone's looking to protect something and hold stuff close to their chest. And I think that getting people involved in this sooner and exposing to them sooner is going to make that transition less chaotic, less anxiety for them, where now you're walking in at 17 and you're on a job site and you understand some things, and you're not say you're going to get your first summer job and you have no knowledge of anything. Your parents were like, so-and-so's a contractor. He said he needs help this summer. You can go demo jobs and sweep floors. Like, there's going to be a level of anxiety for that boy or girl who's walking onto that job site cold, has no idea what's going on. And if you can help quell some of that through education, where it's like, yeah, I remember when I was like 7 watching all of these videos on this and what the difference is between like a lag screw and a standard screw, where you would use nails in place of screws because of shear and strength and different adhesives, and why you use this type of insulation. I think that, like, anytime you walk into anything with more knowledge, you automatically are more confident. Like, the more you know about something, like for me at least, and I could be speaking completely out of my ass, But anytime that I'm anxious about something or nervous about doing something, it's because I don't have experience doing it. The more I do it, the more I fuck up, the more knowledge that I kind of accrue, the more confident I am in my abilities, where I walk into something and I'm like, you know what? Regardless of what happens, I've ran into a lot of different situations, some worse, some easier, and I've always taken care of it and gotten it under control. And I think that the more knowledge that you have, the more experience you have, no matter what level that is, it creates and breeds confidence within you. And that's no different with this than with baking. Like, you know, if my kids at some point go at 16 and they want to work at a bakery, or like there's a farm down the street where they have an indoor restaurant, and like they look back on, hey, I remember that episode where they were talking about not to overbeat the batter because you'll entrain too much air in it. Like, that's going to click with them, and they're not going to have to learn that on the fly, and they're not going to feel like an idiot. And it's little things like that that may seem completely inconsequential as an adult watching your kids learn that. But like, dude, they store all that shit. Yeah. Like the crap that my kids pull out of their head, where I'm like, how do you remember that?
I know. And we I don't mean take advantage of it, but we don't help them take advantage of it.
Exactly.
All right, so you guys listening, we're gonna continue on this little mini series of just like one-on-one digging into these topics. But as far as education in the youth, like I mean 2-year-olds, like and up, you know, whatever, 0-year-olds, just start right from day one. Hey, here's a hammer. No, but we want to know what you guys, like, what are your thoughts on this? Share it on Instagram. We're obviously going to post about it.
Talk to your kids about it.
Yeah, talk to your kids and and maybe they're already interested in it. But what I think we need to tap into this. And I was saying to Tyler yesterday that we're filming all the time and we're talking about our builds, and part of me kind of wants to get a ridiculous outfit like Tyler's hat. And
the hate is real.
I actually really like the hat. But get some sort of like, kid-centric hard hat and vest or something, and like film on my job site and just have like a goofy time just to get their interest, but then also like teach them something where it's like, hey, this foundation is made with concrete. Concrete is made with cement, sand, and stone. Yeah, that's elementary, and everyone listening to this podcast are like, no shit. But there's a whole generation before you and before that generation that doesn't know that. And they might not learn that until they're 16 or 20 years old, how concrete's made. But you introduce that early on, and who knows, maybe they that sticks with them, and then they start having a better understanding of construction. I don't know. I'm going on a limb here, and then they reinvent concrete. Like, hey, why wouldn't you use glass instead of stone? It's like, holy shit, no, we could recycle all the glass. Or like, I have no idea. I'm reaching here, but my point is we are educated.
Yeah, and I think we have to get out of the weeds some. Like, I think that everything that's put out there right now is so high level if you're not involved in it. Where even if you are involved in it, it's something new, it takes time to learn that. And if that's not a burning passion for you, you're not going to make time for it. Or unless it's comes up in your life, your situation, your project where you have to figure it out. Where you never know what's going to stick to these kids, and you have to throw a lot of shit at the wall to see what ends up sticking, and you never know. And I think that, kind of I was going to say dumbing it down, and then I'm just like shitting all over our kids.
I think we all know what you mean by dumbing it down, but maybe we found a new term for that. Simplifying.
Simplifying's probably better.
Making it more elementary.
I think simplifying's good. But yeah, I think that the more opportunity we give young kids, toddlers, to be exposed to this, it's gonna make a massive impact. And we think about turning around our industry and making changes, and you think, well, that'll take 15, 20 years. Well, in the grand scheme of things, 15 or 20 years is nothing if you can make that much of an impact.
Right.
So yeah, I'm definitely down to explore that more. And I think that, gauging your interest, your kids' interest, seeing what you guys think about that, if that's something that would be exciting. And it's like, hey, we don't have to take our kids to Home Depot on the weekends to build a birdhouse. We can do this stuff at home. We can watch it on TV. We can watch it on the iPad. I think, for me and kind of the way things are with our kids and how they're learning and how they're digesting content, I would much rather my kids do this, watch a baking show, watch a fashion type show, than watch the freaking kid Brian and his parents like take soda bottles and put baking soda into them and explode.
All right. Well, if you guys aren't doing it, get some feedback from your kids. If you already are, let us know what your kids are saying or what you guys are doing to help that generation.
You know what? Sorry to cut you off. If that's the case and they start doing that, and it's like, yo, film your kid or like post something about what your kid responds, we should get little Modern Craftsman shirts made for kids and send them to their kids so that they can rock them.
All right. Let's make that happen.
So yeah, either if you're not comfortable posting your kids on social and tagging us, you can post their response, write a review, whatever, and we'll get you and your kids some Modern Craftsman gear.
Well, until next week, we'll see you guys then.